My mother waited until the church banquet hall was quiet enough for every table to hear her before she smiled at me and said, "Claire, sweetheart, don't make this about yourself. You know your sister is the reason this family is still standing." The microphone was still in her hand. 200 people sat under white paper lanterns and gold plastic tablecloths, holding forks halfway to their mouths. My sister Hannah stood beside the dessert table in a pale blue dress, blinking like she was embarrassed by the praise, but ready to accept it anyway. My father looked down at his program. My aunt pressed her lips together and pretended to read the menu card. I was holding a stack of donor envelopes I had helped organize for the church restoration fundraiser. In the bottom envelope, folded behind the pledge cards, was the letter from First County Bank showing every mortgage payment I had made on my parents' house for the last 9 years. My mother had forgotten that part. Or maybe she had counted on me never saying it. I did what I had trained myself to do around my family. I breathed in, kept my shoulders loose, and set the envelopes on the registration table. I didn't look at Hannah. I didn't look at the pastor. I looked at my mother's silver shoes under the podium and waited for the silence to become uncomfortable. She laughed softly, the way she always did when she wanted people to believe she was being kind. "Claire has always been sensitive," she said into the microphone. "But Hannah made the sacrifices. Hannah moved home. Hannah helped us through our hardest years." A woman from my parents' Bible study turned to me with that small, pitying smile people give when they think they are watching a jealous daughter lose control. Except I wasn't losing control. I had lost things much more quietly than that. And that night, in front of everybody my mother cared about impressing, she finally told the version she had been building for years. Hannah was the devoted daughter. I was the difficult one. My mother lifted a glass of sparkling cider toward my sister. "To Hannah," she said, "the daughter who carried us." The room clapped. I clapped too. Not loudly, not sarcastically, just enough that no one could say I made a scene. Then I reached into my purse and touched the edge of the bank folder I had brought because something in me, some tired and practical part, had known my mother would go too far. I didn't open it yet. Silent revenge, I had learned, doesn't begin when you expose someone. It begins when you stop protecting the lie. 9 years earlier, I was 31 and still believed my parents were unlucky, not dishonest. My father had worked at a tool plant outside Dayton until the company downsized. My mother sold handmade wreaths online and told everyone she was building a brand, though she spent more on ribbon than she made in sales. Hannah, 4 years younger than me, had tried real estate, fitness coaching, and boutique candle making before deciding stress was bad for her nervous system. I was a payroll supervisor for a regional grocery chain. It wasn't glamorous, but I was good at it. I liked numbers because they didn't change their story when someone more charming walked into the room. I asked how much. She hesitated just long enough to sound ashamed. $1,482. The second payment came 3 months later, then 2 in a row. Then my mother asked if I could hold the line while Dad found steady work. Summer became Christmas. Christmas became the next spring. By then, I had set up automatic transfers because late fees made me nervous. The mortgage servicer emailed receipts to me because I was the one logging in. I kept a spreadsheet because numbers needed a place to sit. My mother wanted the arrangement quiet. "Your father's pride," she said. I paid because by then the alternative was foreclosure, and foreclosure would break my father in a way I wasn't ready to watch. I paid and saved every receipt. The first warning sign came the year my parents refinanced. I found out because the bank sent a packet to my email by mistake. My mother had listed me as the contact for payment assistance documentation, then told the loan officer Hannah was the one contributing household support. I called her during my lunch break and asked, carefully, why Hannah's name was mentioned. "Oh, honey," Mom said. I could hear a hair dryer in the background, which meant she was getting ready for something. "It was just easier." "Easier how?" "Hannah lives closer. People understand that. You know how paperwork is." I'm the one making the payments. And we appreciate that, she said quickly. But your sister helps in ways you don't see. What ways? She checks on us. She brings positivity. She keeps your father's spirits up. My mother sighed like I had asked her to drag a refrigerator up the stairs. Claire, not everything has to be a competition. So I learned to stop asking. The church banquet started as a restoration fundraiser for St. Mark's, the red brick church my parents had attended for 25 years. My mother volunteered immediately. Public service was her favorite stage. 2 weeks before the banquet, my mother called to ask if I could pay for the catering deposit. I asked why Hannah, the event chair, wasn't handling it. I paid the deposit directly to the caterer. Then I emailed the invoice to the church treasurer and copied Hannah. Hannah replied with a heart emoji and wrote, "Teamwork makes miracles." 5 days before the banquet, I was at my parents' house fixing their printer because my father said the church program wouldn't print. I was on the floor beside the printer with the side panel open when I heard my name from the kitchen. Hannah's voice carried when she was pleased with herself. "Claire is going to be so weird about the tribute," she said. My mother laughed. "Let her, people know how she is." I froze with one hand on the printer cartridge. "What if she says something?" Hannah asked. "She won't," my mother said. "Claire would rather swallow glass than make us look bad in public." Hannah said, "I just don't want him thanking Claire. She already acts superior because she has a steady job." My mother answered gently, like Hannah was the wounded one. "Don't worry. At the banquet, everyone will understand who really showed up." Who really showed up? For 9 years, I had protected my father's pride. My mother had used that protection to erase me. On my way out, I noticed a stack of programs on the hall table. The front cover said, "Honoring families who carry one another." Inside, under a section titled Special Thanks, was Hannah's name. Not mine. I took one program and folded it into my purse. That night, I opened my spreadsheet. 9 years of mortgage payments, catering deposits, grocery orders, utility catch-ups, property tax shortage, emergency plumber, medication, copays for Dad after his knee surgery. Every transfer with a date, amount, and memo line. The total was $186,421.37. Then I printed the spreadsheet, the bank statements, the mortgage servicer receipts, the catering invoice, and the email from the church treasurer thanking me for covering the deposit. I put them in a navy folder with a metal clasp. The banquet was held on a Friday evening in February. Hannah had done well with the decorations, I can admit that. A banner above the dessert table read, "Home is where Grace lives." I arrived early in a black wrap dress and low heels because I was working the registration table. I wore my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones my mother had once said looked too mature on me but classic on Hannah. Hannah was already there, directing 2 teenagers on where to place the centerpiece ribbons. "Claire," she said, looking at my folder, "please tell me that's not more paperwork." "It's paperwork." She smiled like I had proved a private theory. "Of course it is." My mother came up behind her, smelling like gardenia perfume. She kissed the air near my cheek. "Try to relax tonight," she whispered. "This is important for Hannah." "For the church," I said. Her smile tightened. "Don't start." I didn't. Guests arrived in wool coats and church shoes. I checked names, took donation envelopes, and gave directions to the silent auction table. My father hugged me with one arm and said, "Your sister really pulled this off." "It's a big night," I said. He patted my shoulder and went to sit at the family table. I stayed at registration, then helped the treasurer count sealed envelopes in the side office. Around 8, Pastor Glenn tapped the microphone and thanked everyone for coming. Speeches began. Then my mother walked to the podium. She thanked the pastor. She thanked the volunteers. She thanked the church family for surrounding them during our difficult seasons. Then she turned toward Hannah. "And I need to honor my younger daughter tonight," she said. Hannah lowered her eyes. My stomach didn't drop. It settled. My mother continued. Many of you know we had some financial storms after Mark lost his job. Pride can keep families silent, but love shows itself in action. Hannah moved close. Hannah checked on us. Hannah carried burdens most people never saw. I stood near the registration table, with my navy folder under my left hand. She organized this banquet while also being the daughter who has held our family together, Mom said. Her voice trembled perfectly. If this hall has a heart tonight, it is because Hannah gave it one. Applause rose warm and immediate. Hannah wiped under one eye. I felt something inside me go very still. Then my mother looked at me. Maybe she wanted to be generous. Maybe she wanted to remind me of my place. Maybe she simply couldn't resist. And Claire, she said, smiling, helped with the envelopes. A few people chuckled politely. I looked down at the donor envelopes. White paper, black ink, small, orderly rectangles, proof of what people give when they believe the truth will be handled honestly. My mother wasn't finished. Claire, sweetheart, don't make this about yourself, she said, though I had not moved. You know your sister is the reason this family is still standing. That was the line. Not because it was the cruelest thing she had ever said, but it was the cleanest lie she had ever told in public. The room clapped for Hannah again. I clapped too. I asked the church treasurer, Mrs. Albright, if she had 5 minutes after the program to review a reimbursement question. She said, "Of course, honey." I waited. I stood at the registration table and accepted envelopes. I smiled when people handed me checks. I thanked them for supporting the roof. Hannah passed me with 2 slices of cake and whispered, "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine." She tilted her head. "You know Mom didn't mean it like that." "Yes," I said, "she did." Her expression flickered. People began stacking chairs and gathering coats. My mother stood near the dessert table receiving compliments. I saw her touch Hannah's shoulder every time someone praised the event, physically directing the admiration. Mrs. Albright waved me into the side office. Pastor Glenn came in too because Mrs. Albright said reimbursements over a certain amount needed his signature. My mother noticed my father leaving and came after him. Hannah came because Hannah always came when attention moved. The reason I had brought the original folder, and not just copies, was simple. My mother respected presentation more than truth. A single receipt could be dismissed as confusion. A clean stack of dated statements could not. I had tabbed every section with blue sticky notes: mortgage, taxes, utilities, church expenses, food, medical. I hated that I had to make my own life look like an audit before my family would treat it as real. There was also one email I almost left out. It was from my mother to the loan officer during the refinance, written at 11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. Our younger daughter Hannah has been our main emotional and practical support. Under that sentence, she had written, Claire helps occasionally but prefers to keep distance. I had read it 5 times the night I printed it. The lie was not only that Hannah helped. The lie was that I had kept distance while my money crossed that distance every month. I put that email behind the spreadsheet because I did not want to start with cruelty. I wanted to start with numbers. Numbers were cleaner. But I knew, if my mother tried to turn the room soft with tears, the email would explain the shape of the betrayal without me raising my voice. I placed the Navy folder on the desk. "I'm not here to disrupt the fundraiser," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "The church money is separate and fully documented, but because my mother publicly described who carried my parents financially, I need to correct the record with the people who were asked to believe it." My mother made a little laugh. "Claire, this is not the time." "That's what you've counted on," I said. No one moved. I opened the folder. On top was the catering invoice. "This is the catering deposit I paid last month," I said to Mrs. Albright. "You already reimbursed it by check, so there's no issue. I included it because Hannah was publicly credited with solving the vendor problem." Hannah's face flushed. "I coordinated the theme." "You did," I said. "The decorations were beautiful." I turned to the mortgage payment summary. This is not about decorations. My father squinted. What is that? I slid the spreadsheet toward him. 9 years of payments to First County Bank, I said. Mortgage, escrow shortage, late fees, and related household expenses. Paid from my checking account. Total as of last month, $186,421.37. My father stared at the page. My mother's hand moved to her necklace. Claire, put that away. No. It was the first time in my adult life I had said no to my mother without explaining it. Pastor Glenn looked uncomfortable, but not dismissive. Mrs. Albright adjusted her glasses and leaned closer to the statements. These are bank receipts, she asked. Yes, mortgage servicer confirmations, checking account transfers, and emails. I can provide digital copies. Hannah whispered, This is insane. I looked at her. You knew Dad believed you were helping with the house. Her eyes darted to Mom. My father looked up slowly. Linda. My mother's face changed. It was complicated, she said. My father's voice was low. Did Claire pay the mortgage? She helped, Mom said. I turned another page. Automatic transfers began in June 2016. The mortgage login was under Mom's email, but the payment account was mine. When the loan was refinanced, Mom listed Hannah as household support in the narrative. I never signed anything, Hannah said quickly. I know, I said. That's why I'm not accusing you of signing. I'm saying you accepted credit for support you knew you weren't providing. Her mouth opened, then closed. For a second, I almost apologized. My mother turned on me then, quiet and sharp. Are you proud of yourself? She asked. No. You brought private family finances into a church office. You brought private family finances onto a microphone. Mrs. Albright looked down at the page to hide whatever crossed her face. Hannah started crying. Real tears or useful tears, I couldn't tell anymore. I never asked for this, she said. You didn't refuse it either, I said. Dad rubbed both hands over his face. I thought, he stopped. His voice broke in a way I had never heard. Linda, I thought Hannah was bringing money over. You told me Claire had her own bills and couldn't be expected to help. My mother's eyes flashed at me, because I didn't want you feeling like a burden. No, I said. You didn't want him thanking the wrong daughter. That was the sentence that landed. Pastor Glenn cleared his throat. This seems like a family matter, but since public statements were made tonight, perhaps the wisest thing is for no further claims to be made from the podium about private support. My mother looked humiliated by the gentleness of it. Mrs. Albright said, and for the church records, the catering reimbursement will remain under Claire's name, as paid. Hannah wiped her cheeks. So what, you want a parade? I looked at my sister, at the blue dress, at the woman who had learned to survive by being adored. No, I said. I want my name taken off the mortgage payment account by Monday. I want no more public stories about who carried this family, and I want Dad to have copies of every statement. My mother inhaled. You would let us lose the house. There it was, the old trap, obedience dressed as compassion. I had prepared for that question more than any other. No, I said. I already kept you from losing it for 9 years. Now I'm giving you 30 days to refinance, sell, downsize, or make arrangements with the bank. I'll pay one final month directly to the servicer. After that, I'm done. My father looked at me. His eyes were wet. Claire, he said, why didn't you tell me? I wanted to say, because you made it easier to be silent than honest. Because you loved the daughter who made you feel young and tolerated the one who made the math work. Because every time I got close to the truth, Mom called it jealousy, and you let her. But he looked old in that chair, and the point was not to wound him for sport. I thought I was protecting your pride, I said. He nodded once, like the sentence had weight. My mother whispered, This is cruel. I closed the folder. No, I said. Cruel was letting me pay quietly while you applauded someone else. I gave my father the copies. I gave Mrs. Albright the church-related invoice page. I kept the originals. Then I walked out of the office. The banner still hung above the dessert table. Home is where Grace lives. My Aunt Denise approached with her coat over her arm. I heard enough, she said quietly. I nodded. She should have thanked you years ago. I didn't answer because if I did, I might cry. Aunt Denise touched my sleeve. Go home, honey. My mother sent a family group text at 7:14 a.m. We need to discuss Claire's behavior last night. She humiliated this family in front of church leadership. Hannah replied first. I'm still shaking. I don't understand why she hates me so much. Then my father wrote. Stop, I have the statements. Then my mother called me. I let it ring. Instead, I emailed the mortgage servicer and removed my bank account from automatic draft effective after the final scheduled payment. I forwarded my father the contact information for a housing counselor his bank recommended. I attached the spreadsheet in PDF form. By noon, Aunt Denise called. Your mother is telling people you ambushed her. I expected that. She's also saying the documents were confusing. They're not. No, my aunt said. They're really not. Aunt Denise lowered her voice. Your father is at my house. I closed my eyes. He brought the folder, she said. He asked me to look at it because he doesn't trust himself to understand what he's seeing. And he understands. My father called me on Wednesday. I met with the bank, he said. What did they say? We can't refinance on my income, not with the current balance. Okay. Your Aunt Denise knows a realtor. I didn't speak. We're going to list the house. The words sat between us. I had paid to keep it, but paying to keep something does not make it home. I'm sorry, I said. No, Dad said, I am. It was the first apology, not complete, not enough to fix everything, but it was not nothing. He cleared his throat. I looked at the program. What program? From the banquet, your name wasn't in it. No. I should have noticed. Yes, I said softly, you should have. He took that without defending himself. My mother did not. The hardest boundary was not financial, it was conversational. For years, my mother could pull me back with one sentence. After everything we did for you. She tried it in letters, in voicemails, through relatives, and once through the pastor's wife, who apologized as soon as she realized she was being used as a messenger. Each time, I answered the same way. I'm willing to discuss the truth. I'm not willing to discuss a version where I am the villain for keeping records. That sentence became a door. Some people knocked and left. My father eventually walked through it. Hannah stood outside it for a long time. My mother kept trying to paint it shut. She began calling relatives. She told them I had kept a ledger against my own parents. She said I was forcing two aging people out of their home because I wanted applause. Then my father, who had never posted anything more personal than a photo of a tomato from his garden, wrote a statement on Facebook. I am asking friends and family not to discuss our private finances or repeat claims about my daughters. I recently learned Claire has contributed substantially and quietly to our household for many years. I am grateful to her and sorry for not knowing the full truth sooner. Please respect our family while we make changes. My mother deleted her own vague post about betrayal within an hour. 3 people from church sent me messages that week. None of them asked for details, which I appreciated. One woman simply wrote, I'm sorry you were made invisible. Another said, I hope you know some of us noticed you working before we understood what we were seeing. Those messages did not fix anything, but they confirmed something important. My mother's story had depended on nobody looking too closely. Once people looked, it did not hold. At work, I told no one the whole story. I just changed my direct deposit split, stopped moving money into the account labeled Family Help, and renamed it Emergency Fund. The first time I saw the balance grow instead of disappear, I sat at my desk after everyone left and let myself smile. It was not a dramatic victory. It was a private correction. The kind you can feel in your shoulders before you can explain it. Hannah texted me privately 2 days later. I hope you're happy. Mom can barely leave the house. I typed 3 different replies and deleted them all. Finally, I wrote, I hope she learns what public humiliation feels like when it's based on truth instead of lies. Hannah didn't respond. The house listed in March. My parents moved in May to a 2-bedroom rental near my father's pharmacy and the library. It was smaller, but clean, with no stairs. Dad told me the first electric bill was half what the old house cost. He sounded embarrassed by the relief in his own voice. My mother refused to let me visit. That was fine. June came, and for the first time in 9 years, my paycheck arrived and stayed mine. I booked a 3-day weekend in Traverse City and did not invite anyone. My phone buzzed. It was Dad. Your mother found the old thank you notes from the food pantry. She says some were from you. I had forgotten about those. During the winter Dad was out of work. I had arranged grocery deliveries through the pantry under anonymous family sponsor because Mom said accepting help would embarrass him. I replied, yes, that was me. He sent back, I'm sorry I made it so easy for people to erase you. I read that sentence 3 times. St. Mark held its annual volunteer appreciation breakfast in September. I almost didn't go, but Mrs. Albright called and asked if I would help set up the donation software for the new roof fund. I arrived early in jeans, a cream sweater, and the same pearl earrings. The banner this time said, Faithful Hands Quiet Service. My mother was there. I saw her across the room, standing beside Hannah. She looked smaller without a microphone. Hannah's hair was shorter, and she was speaking to a woman from the choir with careful brightness. Then Mrs. Albright walked to the front with a stack of certificates. She thanked the roofing committee, the youth volunteers, the meal train team. Then she said, We also want to recognize someone who has served this church and her family in ways that were not always visible to the rest of us. I stopped moving. No. I had not approved this. Claire Whitaker, she said, for faithful administrative support, quiet generosity, and years of practical service given without seeking attention. People turned. My mother's face went still. I walked forward because refusing would have created the scene I did not want. Mrs. Albright handed me a certificate in a simple black frame. The applause was gentle. I returned to my seat, and my father, who had come in late and stood near the back, clapped with both hands. After breakfast, Hannah approached me by the coffee station. I didn't know the full amount, she said. I looked at her. You knew enough. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. Mom made it sound like you paid sometimes, she said. Like you were helping but also judging us. I was tired, I said. Not judging, tired. Hannah looked over at our mother, who was buttoning her coat too aggressively. I liked being the good one, she admitted. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I know. I don't know how to fix it. You don't fix it with one conversation. She swallowed. Do you hate me? I thought about lying. Then I thought about the folder, the banquet, the years. No, I said, but I don't trust you. Fair, she whispered. My mother did not approach me. For months, I thought that would bother me. It didn't. Her silence had lost its power when I stopped treating it like a verdict. As I was leaving, my father walked me to my car. I'm proud of you, he said. I leaned against my car door. For what? For not becoming cruel. I looked toward the church doors, where my mother and Hannah stood under the awning, not speaking. I came close, I said. No, Dad said. You came prepared. I didn't get back the 9 years. I didn't get the condo I wanted, or the vacations I skipped, or the easy version of daughterhood where love does not require receipts. I kept the framed certificate in my hallway for exactly 1 month. Then I moved it to the inside of my closet, where I would see it but visitors would not. Recognition was good. Proof was necessary. But peace, I was learning, did not need to be displayed to be real. But the mortgage stopped. The lies stopped. The applause moved to its rightful place for one quiet morning. And my name, once hidden in bank statements and email confirmations, became impossible to remove. That was enough. For the first time in years, nobody else's house payment was waiting at the end of my paycheck. Nobody else's version of me was standing at a microphone. Nobody else's comfort required my silence. When my phone buzzed with a message from my mother 2 weeks later, I did not answer right away. It said, "We should talk. This family needs healing." I set the phone face down and finished watering my plants. Later, I replied, "Healing starts with truth. I'm not available for anything else." She didn't respond. I slept well that night. The revenge was not the folder. It was not my mother's face when the numbers appeared. It was not Hannah losing the story she had worn like perfume. The revenge was Saturday breakfast without guilt. A paycheck that stayed mine. A quiet apartment where no one called me selfish for surviving. A life no longer edited to protect people who had never protected me. I did not burn the family down. I simply stopped paying for the walls that hid the truth.